This video is concerned with management by objectives, sometimes abbreviated to MBO. Management by objectives is an important concept used by management, and it's considered as a management tool. So it's very important that we understand what's meant by management by objectives, because it fits in so tightly into our understanding of management and the whole managerial process. It's often mentioned in the literature, it often comes up in discussions about management styles and management techniques. So it's a very important topic to have a clear understanding of. The basic principles of MBO is defined as goals and objectives in order to achieve business processes. So management by objectives is looking clearly at goals and objectives. What are the goals or the aspirations of the business, and trying to link what it wants with the various processes that needs to be undertook or undertaken and delivered. So it's looking at the framework within which the business sets its goals, sets its objectives, and what it can do in terms of the business processes to achieve those goals and objectives. Goals and objectives are key in management by objectives. They are defined by employees and management. They're reviewed and assessed on a continuous basis. So the goals and objectives are central to this particular approach to management. It's having a clear set of goals and objectives that drives the organization. They're set out by the management, they're understood by the employees, mechanisms are put in place, ways of working and processes are put in place to enable the employees to meet their goals and objectives. And if the employees are successful in achieving what's asked of them, then the organization should be successful in achieving its overall goals and objectives. And all of this is assessed on a continuous basis. Performance appraisals and performance indicators are methods used to assess employee developments and achievements, and shows or indicates the extent to which the employee has moved towards the attainment of their set goals. So the employees are given targets, if you like, given something to aim for in terms of productivity or in terms of work completed or tasks to be completed. They're given realistic sets of requirements, and the extent to which they're met then is a measure of their performance. The aim of management by objectives is to identify objectives, which can be done by department or by employee or by management itself. So this whole idea of management by objectives permeates the whole organization. The management have a set of objectives that they must achieve. The departments within the business have sets of objectives that they must achieve, and the employees within the departments have sets of objectives that they must achieve as well. So it's, as we'll see later, it's a cascading system. It moves throughout the organization. The organization sets what it wants to achieve, and then it works its way through the various departments all the way to the employee level, setting objectives all the way. And if every component achieves its objectives, then of course the organization should achieve its objectives. So it's trying to ensure that every part of the organization is pulling in the same direction, and they're all bearing the burden of trying to achieve their objectives, and in so doing contributing towards the overall organizational objectives and the achievement of those objectives. There needs to be an understanding of the purpose of objectives and what will be achieved. Of course, central to much of this discussion is the need for good communications throughout the system. The employees on the shop floor must understand why it's necessary for them to achieve their objectives. The line manager must understand why he or she must achieve his or her objectives. The departmental manager, who looks after perhaps several line managers, must understand why he or she must achieve his or her objectives as well, and so on, all the way up through the organization. And if every part of the organization is achieving their objectives, then of course the organization as a total should achieve its objectives. The concept of management by objectives is to ensure that employees are aware of their goals, of their responsibilities, and also their role within the organization. So the employees should understand why they are important. Each one of them is important because each one has a set of goals to achieve, and through the achievement of those they are contributing towards the overall achievement of the corporate objectives. A management by objective system is a continuous process in which management monitors employees' progress and achievement towards their goals. So the management monitor the employees, and they must monitor the employees on a regular basis. In fact, all parts of the organization should be monitored to ensure that all parts, all employees and managers are achieving what's asked of them. So the process of assessment, if you like, the process of monitoring is pervasive. It runs right throughout the organization. If employees are achieving their goals, then of course the organization will achieve its goal, which is what the organization wants. Now, the basic concept of management by objective is, as I said earlier, it's cascading of objectives from organization to the employees. The organization sets out what it wants in terms of perhaps corporate growth, market penetration, an innovating image within the marketplace. It should be able to effectively deal with competitors and so on. So the organization sets out its objectives, and then to achieve those objectives it works out what's required within the organization, and from there the objectives start to cascade throughout management, each manager taking responsibility for certain processes, and then the managers delegate some parts to line managers and line managers to employees, so that everyone is contributing towards the attainment of the overall objective of the organization. It's setting specific objectives for each employee. The objectives set should not be generalized or vague. These should be very specific. The employee should understand whether he or she is achieving what's asked of him or her. So there can't be broad aspirational objectives. These are specific objectives. Produce so many per week or per day. Produce so many with the following characteristics. So it's very specific sets of objectives, which of course are measurable. There is greater involvement in decision making because of this, because the employees may feed back that the objectives are not realistic, or that there may be some mitigating circumstances that stop them from achieving their objectives. There may be issues that some parts of the production system complain that perhaps the raw materials are not appropriate or poor quality, or so it's informing the whole system that there are issues, And if there are issues in one part, the chances are the overall organisation will not achieve its goals. It'll fall short. So it's important that there's good communications and that the issues that are raised are dealt with effectively. It does help determining time periods and deadlines. It's good for planning. It's good for setting out the planning framework for the business, because each employee, each line manager, each departmental manager and so on, they're all able to feed in what they see as realistic time constraints, so that an accurate picture of the overall capability of the organisation in terms of time requirements can be gained through the feedback mechanism. There should be performance appraisals and feedback. These should occur on a regular basis. They may happen every month or every 6 months or every year. It depends on the organisation. But the manager should be able to speak to employees and set out objectives and set out targets, and these should be realistic, as I said earlier. I'll talk about realism in a few moments, but they should set out these, and once they're agreed with the employee, then that is a part of, in a sense, the contract that the employee has with the organisation. In subsequent appraisals, performance of the employee in attaining what they previously said should be checked and monitored and discussed. Problems in attaining or achieving what they said should be considered, and ways around the problems and support should be offered, and it's an environment in which the employee feels engaged and valued. So the appraisal system should not be seen as something which is highly interventionist by the management and as a control mechanism. It should be seen more of one in which the employee is able to openly and freely voice his or her concerns about the job or about the tasks that he or she confronts, and also what support they require in achieving what's asked of them. Management can use the SMART framework in all of this. SMART is dealt with in separate videos, but it simply means specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-based, to determine, and these can be used to determine the set of employee objectives. When setting employee objectives, they should be specific. They shouldn't be vague. If they're vague, nothing's going to happen. If the outcome of the appraisal system is to tell the employee to generally improve, that doesn't mean very much. It's not very well defined. It should be measurable. You should be able to measure the change between the present and the next appraisal. They should be achievable. They shouldn't be asked to try to achieve some outcome that's not realistic. It should be achievable. It should be realistic. It should be within their capability. And there should be some time dimension. They should be able to do it within an agreed time frame. So the SMART framework could be applied here in the context of management by objectives. Successful management by objectives sets or follows a set of activities. So there is a set of activities that we can imagine here in developing management by objectives. For example, set the goals of the organization, and these, as I said earlier, can run as the corporate goals, or it could be departmental goals, or it could be individual goals. And there should be no contradiction between them. These are supporting each other. The individual goals are supporting the departmental goals. The departmental goals is supporting the corporate goal. So it is a framework that is all moving in the same direction. And having set the goals, develop an action plan. How will these goals be achieved? What's the way in which the organization can develop mechanisms and processes and routines that will help the attainment of these goals? And then review the progress. There should be review systems in place, and these should occur on a regular basis. If there's any deviation from what's planned, then take corrective action and move back and then review it again. So there should always be reviews and then corrective action if it's required. If what's happening is deviating from the plan, then corrective action can be implemented. And of course, that corrective action feeds back to the action plans, where the action plan is updated, the process starts again, reviewing progress and taking corrective action if required. But out of the action plans, if everything goes well, we come to the appraisal system. Here the employees and the managers are appraised on a regular basis to check to see what their contribution is, what the problems they faced are, what issues need to be corrected and changed, what's realistic, what are realistic objectives to set them for the future, what support do they require. So it's the appraisal system. And out of the appraisal system can be fed back to the corporate goals, the departmental goals, and even the individual goals, because this is the resource that the organization is working with. It's working with the employees, and the employees have certain skills and talents. These may need to be augmented. They may need to be refined in the context of emerging technology and changes in customer requirements. And during the appraisal system or the appraisal process, these can be flagged up and fed back to the organization. And this may influence the future goals of the organization. It may influence the routines within the organization in terms of training and development and further monitoring of what's happening in the marketplace, and comparing that with the skill set within the organization to see if there's any variation or any remedial action that's required. And that particular diagram is based on DAFT 2003. Now, successful management by objective follows a set of activities. Set goals. Goals should be smart and address where are we now and what do we plan to achieve. So it's important that these apparently very simple questions are answered. Where are we now? And it's important that the organization has a good fix on where the organization is in terms of its market performance, in terms of what its competitors are doing, trends in the marketplace, its profitability, its perception in the marketplace, and then setting realistic objectives for where it wants to be in the future. And the future could be defined into the distant future, the intermediate future, the next couple of years perhaps, and even the near future in the next 6 months. Develop action plans. What actions will be taken to achieve employee goals, corporate goals and departmental goals? It's one thing to pick up the information during the appraisal system and do nothing with it. So what was the point of the whole exercise? Well, if the appraisal system is to mean anything, then it should be actionable. It should have action plans associated to enable the organisation to develop. And it's important to review progress. Continuous review to ensure action plans are working. That when it implements an action plan, when it designs one, gets one working to fix something that's come out of the appraisal system, some issue that's come out of the appraisal system which needs to be fixed, then it's important that it's reviewed to see if the action plan itself is working. And the need for continual appraisal is important to ensure that the employees, the managers, and all of the internal stakeholders of the business understand their position within the business and their contribution is valued and they are aware of their importance within the organisation, which can, of course, engender positive motivation within the workplace. They can make the staff feel valued, their contributions are valued, and they're part of the planning process itself. Now, the benefits of management by objectives. Well, as I just said, increased employee motivation. The employees are being consulted. They are given clear tasks. They know exactly what's required of them. They're being monitored to ensure that they can meet the tasks. If they can't meet the tasks, then there's an inquiry into what went wrong. It may be that the employees need further training and support, or it may mean that the assigned objectives were unrealistic to start with. It encourages two-way communications. The employees and the management can speak about what's expected of them, how realistic they are, and what resources they need, and opportunities for improvements can be flagged up more easily because there's a better communications channel. There's increased commitment from employees and management. They know exactly what's required of them, they know what their job is, they know what they're doing, they're being appraised on it, they understand that the organisation is supportive in their efforts, but they're being monitored to ensure that they're making a fair and honest attempt at achieving what's being asked of them. The goals that were issued during the appraisal system, or agreed during the appraisal system, probably a better way of putting it, these can be aligned with resources. So it's important that what the employees asked for in terms of perhaps training or additional resources, that these are realistic and they are affordable and they will improve the performance of the employee, the manager, the department, or whatever area we're considering. So it's important that the goals are aligned with resources. The goals are standardized between top management, employees, and between departments. All of them should be pulling in the same direction. The organisation should not be fractured. There shouldn't be a mismatch between the goals pursued within the departments and the goals pursued by the organisation. Clearly they must be pulling in the same direction. They must be trying to achieve the corporate goals. So the individual departments are moving towards the achievement of the corporate goals. That must be the case. And these are some ideas about management by objectives, a very important way in which organisations operate. It's not just production systems, perhaps engineering systems. It applies in services, it applies in education, it applies in many parts of industry and commerce. widely used techniques, and the appraisal systems, or annual review systems, or monthly review systems as they're sometimes called, these are widespread throughout industry and commerce today. So it's important that we understand what they're trying to achieve. There's the text I mentioned earlier, and that's all we want to deal with in this session. So thank you for watching.